Hi, my name is Dimmick Robertson, and I am one of the co-founders of CustomInsured. And we're here today to talk a little bit about group health plans or group health insurance. And just to give you a little background on CustomInsured, basically our concept is that we create customized health insurance solutions for individuals, families, and small businesses. So we really don't buy into the whole one size fits all concept that traditional PPO and HMO policies try to push you into. We actually customize the coverage for each individual situation or business. As we go through this webinar, some of these things you may have already considered, but some of them maybe not. There's a few items that you really want to kind of keep in mind. First is how many employees you are looking to offer coverage for. Second is how much do you want to contribute? Do you want to contribute 100%? Do you want to contribute 50%? Do you want to vary it based on the individual? And then along those same lines, do you have a budget in mind in terms of what you're comfortable allocating towards your group health insurance? From there, we'll really kind of just jump right into it. Broadly speaking, when it comes to health insurance, there are three different options that you have. The first option is an ACA or Obamacare compliant policy. These are the traditional HMOs and PPOs, Humana, Blue Cross, the ones that most everybody is most familiar with. These policies have some pros and cons. As far as pros, they're really good in the fact that they do not underwrite these policies, so everybody can get coverage. They cannot look at anyone's health history, so for people that are really sick or have chronic health issues, this tends to be kind of the best approach for their coverage, simply because of that. Another pro with these policies is if you're in network, which that is kind of its own little caveat, but if you're in network, the coverage can be pretty good once you fulfill the deductible. Now on the con side, this is one of the reasons that we kind of started our company, because these policies have so many negatives. So many people have frustrations, and they're just dealing with a lot of these issues, with one of them being the limited networks. It's very hard to find a PPO network anymore. Most of them are HMOs. And really all that means is the networks are becoming much more restrictive as far as where you're allowed to go. Much more limitation for the insured. Some people are having to change their doctor, or some people are getting surgeries, and the anesthesia isn't covered. So just the limited networks is posing a lot of problems for a lot of people. The next big issue with these policies is the fact that they're typically going to have a pretty good sized deductible. It can range anywhere on the low end from $1,000 up to $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. So that's just the amount that you would have to pay out of pocket as an individual if you had any major health event. You're assured of having at least a 4-figure bill when you walk out. The number three, this is probably the number one reason, actually, the premium increases. Probably the number one issue that small businesses and individuals are having with these policies is the fact that not only are they so expensive, but in the last couple of years, these policies are jumping up drastically year to year, 20-30%. What's happening for a lot of business owners is they're having to change their policies every year just to try to get better premiums. So it's kind of an ongoing hassle people are having to deal with year in and year out. Also, these policies have open enrollment limitations, so that means that there's only a certain time of year that you're allowed to make any changes. Once that time expires, it's usually about a 6-week period. Once that time expires, you're kind of stuck with the coverage, so to speak, until the next year. You can't make any adjustments throughout the year. They also have minimum enrollment requirements. So if you're looking to set up a traditional group package, There is a 1 month window out of the year where there's an exception, but for most of the year, if you're looking to set one of these packages up, you have to have at least 80% of your workforce participate. Sometimes that's not a problem, but on the other hand, sometimes it is. Some people only have maybe half the employees they want to cover, or something like that. So that can pose kind of an additional roadblock here with these packages. And also another kind of dirty secret with these traditional policies is they're really designed for larger companies. And the reason for that is because going back to the pros, on the underwriting and the fact that anybody qualifies, when they're setting up, the insurance company is setting up a new group policy, if they can't look at anybody's health history, all they have to go on is the size of the group and the age of the individuals. So naturally, a larger group is going to have less exposure for the insurance company because they can pool the risk across more people. In other words, if one or two people have large hospital bills in a year and there's 100 people on the plan, well, that's not really going to have that much of an impact on their numbers. Whereas if you have 10 people on the policy, and a lot of companies we meet with are smaller, 5, 8, 10, 15 people. If you have a smaller group like that and one or two people have big bills throughout the year, well, now suddenly 10 or 20% of the group had large expenses, and as a result, the insurance company jacks up the premiums, jacks up everybody's premiums. So the smaller companies are really at a big disadvantage in light of that. Now, a second option that we educate and kind of enlighten people a lot about is private coverage. Private coverage has its own set of pros. You can see them listed here. Some of the big ones are the fact that there's typically low deductible or no deductible coverage. So the idea being that once you actually use your insurance, that it would kick in from the first dollar versus you having to pay, $2,000, $5,000 first, and then the insurance picks up the difference. Also with a private, you're going to have unrestricted network. So that gives you the flexibility to go anywhere you want. The insurance company is not going to dictate where you're able to go. You pick the doctor, you pick the hospital, you pick the facility. It even travels nationwide and worldwide for that matter. So even if you're on vacation or traveling, your coverage would actually follow you. One of the big pros with private is the fact that they have controlled costs. The reason for that is that they actually underwrite these policies. So because they know who's coming into the pool, that allows them to control the costs to where the annual premium increases, contrasting with the ACA policies of 30% in some years. On average, with a private policy, you're going to see a 1 to 2% annual increase. And that's really just based on you getting 1 year older. So these are very good plug-and-play solutions. In other words, if you have a package or policy that you like, you can actually just leave it. You don't have to revisit it on a regular basis because the premiums are going back through the roof. Another nice feature with the private packages is you have no enrollment period. So that just kind of gives you the flexibility to make changes anytime you want. You don't have a certain window each year where you're able to. You can adjust your coverage anytime you want, just simply with a phone call. Now on the con side with the private, as I referenced a moment ago, they do underwrite these policies. So they are going to look at health history. For most people, that's really a non-issue. They're either healthy or have minor or modest health things going on. On the other hand, there are going to be those people out there that have significant health issues that may be a bit more limited as far as their choices when it comes to private coverage. Another option here in terms of your health insurance is what we call a hybrid. And hybrid is really where you're just adding elements of different policies. For instance, maybe you have an ACA style policy and you supplement that with other coverage to cover the deductible, where you're putting different parts of different policies together. Some of the pros with a hybrid, is you can, for pregnancy coverage, it can be very effective. You can set it up to where you have max $500 out of pocket, maybe a zero out of pocket pregnancy and birth. Also, for those people, going back to the underwriting for the private, those people that maybe have more limited options on private, hybrid solution, we can put together some different options to give them some more choices to look at as well. And then on the con or negative side with a hybrid is if it's not structured properly, you can leave holes in your protection. So you want to be sure you kind of know what you're getting into, what the policies are going to do. And sometimes the coverage can be just what I would consider too good to be true. We'll hear stories of a 40-year-old that had a friend at their age that had a policy for $80 a month that they swore by. And inevitably, when you look at the coverage or have a chance to find out what it is, it's never as advertised. So we encounter that quite a bit, where something that sounds too good to be true, when it comes to health insurance, a lot of times it really is too good to be true. So with that in mind, what is really the best plan for your group health needs? These are kind of some of the bigger benefits that we encourage people to consider when putting their package together. Is your plan going to give you unlimited networks? Is it going to let you go to any doctor facility anywhere you want? Is it going to have first dollar coverage? That deductible for the average person, $1,000 to $3,000, that's hard to come by. So, even if you have what's considered a relatively small deductible, in the big picture, is that going to be in your employees' best interest if they ever have a major event? Also, as your coverage give you the flexibility to enroll as many or as few people as you want. Again, maybe only half your company wants to sign up, or maybe only a couple people, or maybe all of them. Is the coverage going to give you the flexibility you need? And also, is it going to give you the ability to customize your coverage anytime you want, to make those changes throughout the year if you decide you want to add or remove coverage, even add or remove employees for that matter. So just some things to consider in terms of, how broad do you want your coverage to be, and how flexible as well. This here is just a little bit more of a recap on an ACA or Obamacare style group plan. Again, these are the traditional plans that most people are familiar with when they think of group health insurance. They're very much a one-size-fits-all. It's either going to be a PPO or HMO. Even the PPOs are going to be more restrictive. They're going to have a higher deductible when you're out of network, and they're going to have lower co-insurance. And at the end of the day, you don't really have a lot of control over the coverage. The only thing you can really control is, by paying more, you can have a lower deductible. That's really about it. And then the deductible, and premium is really based on group levels. They have a bronze, silver, there's a gold, platinum. Obviously, each level is going to be, more expensive as you go up, but also have a lower deductible in exchange. And just to reiterate again, these are the main types of coverage that have existed in the group setting, really even now. But a lot of people are finding that, they're not really happy with these policies anymore, or it's getting to a point where it's almost unsustainable. The coverage is diminishing, deductibles are increasing, premiums are increasing, so there's really kind of a need for a new approach, a new option. And that's really where the private comes in. Most people that we sit down with, the private is really what appeals to them the most. And this graphic here, it just kind of shows you a little bit about how the private coverage comes together. So really the idea, broadly speaking, is that you would have several policies put together, and by placing these policies together, you create a comprehensive package that gives you total protection with limited, if any, out-of-pocket expense. It also gives you the flexibility to adjust the coverage for everything from budget to just individual need. And then this here shows a little bit more about how a private package comes together. The idea is that you'd kind of have a catastrophic umbrella for big items, catastrophic diseases, cancer, diabetes, heart attack. or significant accident that laid you up in the hospital. So you have kind of the catastrophic portion of the coverage for those things, and then under that you have kind of your day-to-day type stuff, outpatient, voluntary doctor visits, or even maybe outpatient surgery, things that you can schedule. And then you can kind of see down there, breaks down a little bit deeper on, lab work coverage on those doctor visits. It's going to give you 4 visits a year, give you preventative coverage, prescription. Also, you can probably notice there dental and vision is a coverage you can add in as well, and that breaks the dental and vision component down a little bit also. So really at this point, as I mentioned, a lot of people are really gravitate towards the private once we show them what it is and how it works. But unjustifiably, there's really kind of the big skepticism on it. Just it sounds too good to be true, right? I was kind of referencing that earlier with some of the hybrid plans, but it sounds too good to be true. And fair enough. I mean, this is a new concept for a lot of people, and I would actually I expect people to respond that way. That's actually smart to think that. So really, this is kind of a breakdown on why the private coverage is able to come together the way it does. So for starters, it tends to be about 20 to 30% lower than a comparable style HMO or traditional group policy. And why is that? Well, why is it able to be priced lower so consistently? And the simple answer is underwriting. If you remember on the traditional policies, they don't underwrite, so they actually have to price those as if everybody is sick because they can't check. They don't know. So that's why the premiums are so high. They price everyone as if they're sick. Well, on the private, because they look at your health history, the only people they price as sick are people that actually are sick. So 9.5 out of 10 people are either going to be perfectly healthy or very mild health issues. So because the insurance can take their health history into account and they're healthy, it's actually able to offer much lower premiums. So it's not a magic bullet or a big secret, anything like that. It's just simply that they can take people's health history into account and the traditional policies cannot. So as a result, healthy people are going to pay less. Now, the second question is on the networks. How is it that a company can really cover you everywhere? It doesn't seem plausible. It doesn't seem possible. And really the reason is because with the private policies, the company we work with, they've been around for about 60 years. And historically, the bread and butter for the private companies has been the rural areas. More of the towns, not so much the cities, because the cities, we've had lots of options in the cities for years. Obviously lots of people live there, so the insurance companies have lots of coverage options, whereas the smaller towns, they didn't have those choices, so somebody had to come in and offer them a solution, which is what the private coverage does. But not only that, if you're in a smaller town, you're an hour and a half from everywhere, right? So the policies had to give people the ability to go to the local doctors, number one, and to the city doctors for all the cities around them. And it couldn't just be one. Maybe you want to, if you live outside of Austin, maybe you want to go to Houston, maybe you want to go to San Antonio, maybe you want to go to Austin. So they actually structure these policies to give people the ability to go anywhere, just because where they lived, they were going to have to go for a ride for their health care anyway. So, and the third one is, why haven't I heard of this before? If this is so good and can do what it says, why have I never heard of this? And this goes back to what I was just saying about the smaller towns. There hasn't been a need. I mean, up until the past 4 or 5 years, once Obamacare came into play, it changed everything in the healthcare market. Initially, it was just on the individual side, but what's happened is those insurance companies are having to make up their losses, so that's spilling over to the group policy side. So over the course of the past few years, that's where you're seeing these big jumps in premiums and deductibles. So it wasn't until just recently that there was really a need to look at a different option, and until that need has existed, it didn't really matter. Nobody had to pay attention to this stuff. But now, the market's effectively broken or it's on its way. So now there's a need not only for the small towns who always had private coverage, but for the big cities, because the other option is just it's becoming so unsustainable. And really, that kind of wraps up the points that I wanted to be able to address. Hopefully, I gave you some things to think about. In a perfect world, you'll have more questions now than when you started the webinar, which I consider a good thing because that means that you heard a lot of things that are important to you. So please feel free to reach out. Again, our whole approach is we want to take it as a case-by-case basis. We want to work with you as an individual or your company as an individual, create a solution that's going to work for you, and give you the knowledge and confidence in your coverage going forward. You can see my email there. You feel free to reach out, Agent Dimmick at CustomInsured. Also our website. We have a bunch of resources on there. We got podcasts, videos, network searches, all kinds of stuff. So you can kind of dig around there a little bit too. But yeah, again, we're here available if you have any questions or need any assistance with anything or would like to find out more. Please feel free to reach out. Outside of that, I appreciate you taking the time here today to listen, and hope you take care.